Chris Parsons here, author of The Happy Healthy Marriage Reset, and I'm out for a walk answering our first question in the Thriving Relationships group. So, L says that his wife is disconnected and has a work husband, and that she's working long hours, talking to him at all times of the day and evening. Sorry, my hand's bouncing around. And wants to know what he can do and how he can start some conversations. One thing he mentioned is that she's working extremely long hours and that the childcare is falling on him. And so the best way to approach these conversations is by starting off with sincerity about how you feel. So he needs to tell her how he's feeling by acknowledging the disconnection, by saying, hey, it feels like we're really disconnected and you're putting more time than you need to in at work. What's going on, right? Or even taking it a step further and saying, hey, I feel like I've been having to do too much for the kids, that you're putting too much on me, and that you've been preferring to be at work rather than at home with me and the kids. What's going on? How do you feel? You've got to ask questions. It really comes down to asking good questions, which is really about caring, right? Showing her that how she feels and what's going on with her is important to you. And so you want to start off by acknowledging how you're feeling and then asking those questions to try to uncover what's really going on, rather than have to make assumptions and guess. Also, tell her that you feel uncomfortable with her relationship with her coworker. Hey, it makes me feel uncomfortable how much time you spend with him and how you're always messaging him, right? It's not an accusation. It's not insecure. It's not saying, are you having an affair? It's acknowledging how you feel, which is very, very powerful. And so that is the conversation. Is that a hard conversation? If you feel resistance to having that conversation, then it's because of you're afraid of what the answers are and where it's going to lead you. And nothing in your life gets better when you make your decisions out of fear. Okay, you have to make decisions to deal with things, because avoiding them and ignoring them, nothing gets better. So address what you're feeling uncomfortable with and acknowledge how you feel in a way that doesn't make your wife feel attacked, doesn't make her feel judged. You're not blaming her. You're not telling her that she needs to change. You're saying how you feel. You're not trying to control her. And that's an important distinction. And he also mentioned that they have a vacation coming up. And so I'll tell you a story of something that happened to me. My wife and I were going on vacation, and my wife was this was years and years ago, my wife was being just terrible, mean and ugly. And I'm driving the car, and we're on our way to the beach, and 2 states away from where we live. And I pulled over and I said, I'm not going to stay in the car while you treat me like this. And I parked the car, got out, walked away. Now, she could have kept going without me, She could have left me there. I would have had to, catch an Uber to a rental car place, or who knows. But what I knew was that I respected myself enough to not allow her to treat me that way. And so she called me, didn't answer, called me, didn't answer, called me, didn't answer. Then I answered. She's like, "Where are you? Get in the car." Click, hang up, right? Because I'm not going to be treated that way, because I have respect for myself. I love my wife, but I also love myself. And by letting her treat me that way, I wouldn't be loving myself. So then she called me again. She said, "I'm sorry, please get in the car." I said, but she still had kind of an attitude about it. And I said, "I'm not getting in the car until you change your attitude." And she said, "I just need a minute to cool down. I will change my attitude. I'm sorry." I said, "Okay, I'm across the street at the CVS. You can come pick me up." And got in the car, and we had an amazing vacation. And I was telling my good friend this story not too long after that. And he's like, "Man, I would have never done that. I wouldn't have made it an issue. I would have just tolerated it and ignored it because we were on our way to vacation, and I wouldn't want to ruin the vacation." And I said, "Has that happened to you?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we were going to Disney, and my wife was being mean, and the trip was terrible. The whole vacation, we were both in bad moods. I was resentful about how she treated me. She was resentful about whatever she was in a bad mood about. Nothing got addressed. We just stayed in a bad mood. Then we got back, and, things kind of just went back to normal." And it's like, okay, so by not standing up for yourself, by not saying how you feel, by pretending to be okay when you aren't, and by moving past hurts rather than dealing with them, you don't make anything better. Maybe you avoid a momentary argument or discussion that you're uncomfortable with, but you haven't done anything to move your relationship forward. Now, he was asking specifically for some conversation starters. And the most important, the most valuable conversations that you have with your spouse are about feelings. Of course, you need to have discussions about, whether to move and, all sorts of other things. But the most important discussions, aside from those big discussions, are talking about, how do you feel? And the way to encourage your spouse, if your spouse doesn't know how to have those conversations, doesn't seem to have an interest in those conversations, the way to have them is by starting off by saying how you feel. And acknowledging that, and not ignoring it, because that's what's easier in the moment. That's a short-term decision, right? When you do things that are easy in the moment, you get a hard life. When you do things that might be hard in the moment, you get an easy life. This is very, very applicable to parenting, right? Parents that make the easy decision to give in to their children and give them whatever they want have a much harder life parenting than parents that make the hard decisions in a moment to make their life easier over time. And the same is true in your marriage, because we're all faced with these decisions. Do I make this an issue? Do I bring this up? Do I say how I'm feeling? Or do I do what's easiest in the moment? You have to change your mentality around that to not be asking yourself what would be easier, because you know what happens when you make easy decisions, and instead to be asking yourself, what will help us come closer together? All right, I hope that helps, and let me know if you've got questions, how to apply that more specific, nuance to it. let me know in the Thriving Relationships group, and I'll see you next time.